Today in our table of contents, we're going to talk about decimal place value with base 10 blocks. Okay, so I'm going to add the date. So this is decimal place value, base 10 blocks, and this is MBT3. Okay. So decimal place value with base 10 blocks. Okay, so when I think of decimal place value, I'm going to make just a quick sketch of a decimal place value chart. So I have my ones place, and right on that line there's a decimal. Okay, then there's the tenths place. Notice the THS on the end. I have my hundredths place, and then I have my thousandths place. The THS is on the end. Okay, so it goes ones, tenths, hundredths, thousandths, and we're going to talk about why that exists. So if I had the number 0, decimal, 1, 2, 3, I would read that as 0 and 123 thousandths, because I say whatever place value I end in. So the decimal is set as and. Okay. So when I think about why is that the case, I can use base 10 blocks to represent this number or to represent any decimal number. Okay. When I look at my hundredths block here, okay, I notice that there's little squares and then there's lines of squares or rows of rectangular pieces here. If I look at the total right here on this hundredths block, there's 100 of the little itty bitty pieces. Okay, there's 100 of the little itty bitty pieces. There are 10 of the long rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so out of the total 100 pieces, out of the little 100 pieces right here, each one of these little blocks, or one of these, okay, so in my notebook I can write a little, a little dot to represent one of these little blocks right here. That equals 1 out of the 100 that I need to make the whole. And the way I would read that is 1/100th. Okay. If I look at my 100 block again, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of these 10 sticks that it takes to make a whole. So if I'm thinking about 10 sticks, do a little drawing there, just a straight line. This is 1 out of 10 that I need to make the whole. Okay. So little dots are 1 out of 100. The base 10 blocks right here are 1 out of 10. So if I read this as a fraction, I read it as 1/100th or 1/100th. Okay. If I read this in words as a fraction, I read this as 1/10th. Okay. 1 out of 10 or 1/10. This is 1 out of 100 or 100th. Now the way I write this as a decimal with my place value chart, 100th would be 0 and, because the decimal reads as and, 0.1. 0 and 0.1. Because 0 goes here, 0 goes in the tenths place, and a 1 goes in the hundredths place because this is 1/100th. 1 equals, one of these little 10 sticks equals 1/10, or the way I say it, 1/10. The way I write that as a decimal is 0 and 1, or 0.1, and there's the tenths place right there. Okay? So the reason one of these little cubes, or one little dot if I'm using place value drawings, represents 1/100th because it takes 100 of them to equal this whole hundreds block. The reason one line or one tens block equals 1/10 is because it takes 10 of them to equal an entire whole, to equal one whole. Okay? So if I think about what I know now with place value and decimals and with these ones blocks and these tens pieces, I'm going to look at the decimal place value practice page that you have with you. Okay? And it says what number is represented by 3 flats. Okay? That would be the hundreds blocks. 3 flats, 7 rods, and 9 units, or 9 little dots. Okay. Well, I need to use my notes and go back and think about what does that really mean. Okay. I know each little dot represents 1/100th. So this must mean if I have 9 little dots that I have 9 hundredths. Okay. Because each one represents 1/100th, like we've talked about right here. Now, if I have 7 rods, or 7 10 sticks, that means that it represents 7 tenths, because each one of these represents 1/10. So 7 of them represents 7 tenths. Now, if I have 3 flats, well, what does this represent? The whole flat represents 1 whole. Okay? We didn't write that up here, but we can. A whole flat represents 1 whole. Okay? So this is a unit, this is a rod, and this is a flat. Okay? So if I have all of that, if this each one of these represents 1 whole, then I have 3 wholes. Okay? Now I'm going to look at my place value chart. Okay? Ones goes first, so I have 3 wholes, I have 3 ones, and then I know beside that there's a decimal. And then tenths go next. Well, how many tenths do I have? I have 7 tenths. And hundredths go next, and I have 9 hundredths. So this represents, the way I would say this number is 3 and 79 hundredths, because I'd be in the hundredths place. Okay. Number 2 says, what number is represented by 8 units, 1 flat, and 6 rods? Okay, 8 units, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And each unit represents 1/100th. If I have 8 of them, I have 8 hundredths. Okay, if I have 1 flat, each flat represents 1 whole, so I have 1 whole. If I have 6 rods, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each rod represents 1/10. And if I have 6 of those, then I have 6 tenths. Now, to try to write my number in regular form, I need to think about my place value chart. Ones go first, so I have 1 whole. Right beside the ones place, there's my decimal. So I have a decimal. Right beside the decimal are my tenths, which are represented by my rods. So I have 6 tenths, so a 6 comes next. And then beside the tenths place is the hundredths place. So I have 8 hundredths, or 8 units. So an 8 goes here. Now the way I would say this decimal is 1 and 68 hundredths. Okay? 1 and 68 hundredths. I'm going to give you some problems to solve on the next page. You're going to glue this into your notebook, and then on the following page, you are going to solve some problems using your place value chart and what we've just learned in this video. Okay? So if you have 3 rods, 2 flats, 1 unit, you're going to tell me what number is this. Okay, that's the first one I want you to solve. The second one I want you to solve in your notebook is if you have 4 flats, 2 rods and 7 units, what number is this? Okay. Silly saying for today is, remember that, oh, I'm going to tell you what year I was born. I was born in 1987. So you have to come in and tell me how old I am.